Ever since their introduction into the galactic as a whole, humans have been known as some of the nicest species you could ever possibly deal with. Even as they were being raised up beyond their planet's atmosphere, as they were discovered just barely reaching to the stars, they held their arms open and welcomed every single species down to their own planet so that they could talk, converse, enjoy each other's company, and of course learn from each other. This was one thing that was universal to pretty much every single human that was reached to as they began to go beyond the cradle of their home planet, reaching first to their satellite, what they called the moon or Luna, and then extending to other planets within its own sector, which they called the Sol sector. After that, they didn't travel all that far, however, because they continued to grow. The massive expansion gave them so much room, they were so spread out, and humans, being a communal species, simply did not stretch out beyond there for a long, long time. So it was of great shock to everyone when humans began to reach beyond their own sector and began to start trading hubs around. And these trading hubs, surprisingly, did very well. A lot of people had trepidations about how well they would do. However, the humans did invite everyone to them. And nothing seemed to bother the humans, not the young ones running around or getting into trouble. They simply handled them very delicately, which was surprising since humans have an extremely dense muscle mass and an even more stronger skeletal system. Each of the humans, say one of the Schnixa, which is as they like to call giant otters, had one of its young run up and climb up a human's leg and start digging into it with its claws. This is a natural reaction as it was afraid of the crowds and wanted to climb up the nearest foliage that it could find, unfortunately finding a human. The human could seen visibly wincing from the pain of the claws digging in, and when the child realized it was climbing up an actual sapient being, it bit the human. The human, again, barely even registered that it was being bitten, as its mother came over, desperately trying to apologize. The human simply knelt down so it was face to face with its mother and moved in a position so that the mother could actually retrieve their young, and then apologize for any trouble or traumatic experience that the child might have as climbing up one of the humans. She was surprised at the idea that someone would apologize to her for their own child. It was odd. However, this was a common practice around there, especially with children. As many people would not understand human culture, they would constantly mess up and realize that they were being insulting, and immediately the humans would say, "It's okay." This was a common phrase for humans, so common in fact that it was considered odd to not hear that. However, over time, people realized that humans were simply just a nice people. Maybe that's why the Hrchta decided that they wanted to take over what humans had, since humans had become unbelievably wealthy due to these expansions. This lizard-type species decided it wanted to take over at least one of these trading hubs, noted as the Memphis Belle. When they first came in, they simply came in as commercial freighters and no one thought anything. And then these same lizards came out, pulled weapons, and held everyone hostage and ran straight towards the command center, drove their way in, and executed every single one of the command staff they could find. Then they held all the humans prisoner and said that they were now under the lizard's control. The humans, ever so defiant, did fight back. However, their numbers were completely overrun, especially when you're looking at 40-1 odds. It wouldn't matter how strong the human was. There's enough biomass on each one just to hold the human down, at least for a while. That is when one of the other races, the Shita, a more insectoid and / mammalian type species, had one of its young run over to help the human as it was down. That is when one of the lizards slashed down with its claws and crushed the young one right in front of the human's eyes. This scene has been played so many times that everyone knows that the human simply looked at the young one being crushed. Its eyes widened at the idea that a young one was just taken out for simply trying to help and not pushed away. And then something happened inside its eyes. Some people believe that a demon rested inside. Some people believe that it suddenly took a shot of adrenaline, which, as we know, is lethal to most species around the world, but humans produce it naturally. Others believe that the human knew this young one. No one knows the exact reason, but the human tilted its arms and with a violent scream threw off 23 of its lizard assaulters. And as they came at him with blades and any type of projectile weapons, it did not seem to quell this one's rage as he began to rip through each of them, going to the same one that had decided to kill these young ones. When it found that one, trembling in fear, the lizard begged for his life, and the human, giving no word, grabbed him by the throat, reached up, grabbed the lizard's arm, pulled it as hard as he could, and with a violent twist, snapped every bone and then yanked as hard as he could, tearing flesh, tendons, and muscles as it flew across the room. As everyone looked in fear, this human had just survived Lord knows how many stab and slash wounds, how many projectiles were currently lodged in its system, and it just had ripped the lizard's arm clean off, one-handed. It was about this time they knew that humans might be nice, but something was wrong. They might have misjudged them. That same human got on one of the comlinks and started screaming, "They're killing kids! They're killing the fucking kids!" before collapsing on the ground and bleeding out. This must have seemed as a battle cry to everyone else, because through the bulkheads you could hear the screaming of humans, a deep wail that seemed to shake the metal walls inside the station. And throughout you could hear shots being fired, others running, and the sound of flesh being ripped apart. The humans could be seen on some of the screens chasing down these lizards, grabbing by the tail, and the lizards in haste trying to snap their tail off, thinking the humans would chase the tail. Oh no. In one case, they held onto the tail, chased the lizard down, and beat him into the bulkhead with it. After it was all done, not even half the humans had survived. Those that did required immediate medical attention. Yet, out of all the other civilians, all the other species, there was but that one loss. Now there is a phrase that goes around the entire universe when dealing with other species, because they'll always ask, "So what do you think about the humans?" And they will get the response, "Oh, humans are the nicest species you'll ever meet." Until they're not.